Chapter 61. Could not bear to dispose of her. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 61. Could not bear to dispose of her. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Elsewhere, Jiang Lai knocked on the CEO's office door and walked in cautiously. CEO, everything's done. Jin Xuechu's MV stopped filming just moments after they started. Yu Tingfeng twirled a coin in his hand. His smile was beautifully sinister. His lips were thin, red, and had an elegant charm. So that's why she dared to stand me up. I thought, maybe she was suddenly enlightened on the meaning of the word integrity, but as it turns out, she's just found a new player. I never thought that she'd have the skills to get involved with Jin Xuechu just days after returning to the country. Jiang Lai listened quietly. At those kinds of moments, shutting up was the best course of action. When Yu Tingfeng finished speaking, Jiang Lai clenched his teeth and asked, CEO, if Jin Xuechu can't film indoors, then he might switch to shooting outdoors. Yu Tingfeng shot him a brief glance, making him tremble. Did I ask you that? Jiang Lai shook his head immediately. Yu Tingfeng slapped the coin audibly onto the table. I don't want him to ever film again. Jiang Lai became anxious. CEO, Jin Xuechu is backed by two large companies, Golden Universe and Universal Entertainment. He's also the shareholder for both companies. If you do that, it won't be too nice. Yu Tingfeng nodded earnestly. Yes, it won't be nice at all. Before Jiang Lai could even breathe a sigh of relief, Yu Tingfeng said, tell Chu Jing to put Golden Universe and Universal Entertainment as our targets for acquisitions this year. Jiang Lai nearly fell. Boss, can you not be so ruthless? Yes, I will tell General Manager Chu immediately. Jiang Lai did not have the mettle to continue giving advice, so he ran to do what he was told. He did not wish to stay there for a second longer. 10 minutes later, the phone on Yu Tingfeng's desk began ringing. He picked it up and said, yes. A man's voice rang through the phone. What's going on, big boss? Didn't you say we won't be expanding into the entertainment industry this year? Yu Tingfeng's right hand was twirling a pen slowly. I feel like doing it now. Silence from the other end. Yu Tingfeng asked, any more questions? Not at all. No questions. I'm very much okay with it. Then I'll get someone to lay out an acquisition plan. After hanging up, Chu Jing immediately turned to Jiang Lai, who was sitting on the opposite of Chu Jing's work desk. What's going on actually? Who angered our young master? It's been a long time since I've seen him this angry. Jiang Lai sighed. Someone left him hanging. Chu Jing's eyes opened wide. OF*CK, who hit this brave fella? Digging his own grave. Part of Chu Jing's lineage was from country M, a quarter, to be exact, so the outline of his eyes was very charismatic. His facial features were quite perfect too, and as a result, he was undeniably handsome. When he blinked so suddenly, he looked like an incredibly startled, exotic short-haired cat. Jiang Lai replied slowly, it's a woman. Chu Jing pursed his lips. Has she been fed to the fishes in the moat? Jiang Lai shook his head. No. She's still alive, living better than us even. How? Chu Jing slammed his desk. That's impossible. I've known him for so many years. It never ends well for those who make him angry. I'm an example of this, and until now, I've never seen anyone being accepted. This is that one exception. On what grounds? Who is that woman? I'd like to know how F*King good she really is. Not only is Yu Tingfeng not angry, she even got him to back off. I guess he just can't bear it. Chu Jing thought, what do you mean? Jiang Lai got up and said. I should be getting back to dealing with some other things. Be careful these few days. It was only after Jiang Lai left that Chu Jing finally understood, albeit vaguely. When Jiang Lai said that CEO you could not bear it, he probably meant that the Yuting Feng could not bear to dispose of that woman. The only thing he could do was direct that anger to others and let them suffer instead. Chapter 62. I have sleepless nights just thinking about you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 62. I have sleepless nights just thinking about you. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. At 2 in the morning, Yan Qingxi, along with Xiao Su, had been waiting at the underground parking lot for 4 hours already. Xiao Su was yawning constantly because he was too tired, and red streaks were already present in his eyes. Miss Qingxi, maybe the paparazzi's information wasn't correct. Maybe Luo Jinchuan isn't coming home tonight. Sleep was a word that did not seem to exist in Yan Qingxi's dictionary. There appeared to be zero traces of tiredness in her eyes. She glanced at the time and said, 1 more hour. If he doesn't show up, we'll go home. Luo Jinchuan's recent movements were bought by Miss Mai from a longtime friend of hers, who worked as an entertainment journalist. That night was a weekend, and Luo Jinchuan would reportedly stay at Xue Zheng's place during weekends until the wee hours, after which he would come back to his apartment alone. Yan Qingxi was waiting at his apartment's underground parking lot at that very time. If he came back, he would have to pass through there. Half an hour went by when a car came in through the entrance. Yan Qingxi woke Xiao Su up. Get ready. He shivered and was wide awake immediately. Yan Qingxi said, remember what I told you. It must be clear, and my face can't be in the picture. I understand. Don't worry Miss Qingxi, I joined the photography club back in school. Sporting a cap and sunglasses, she opened the door and got down. Luo Jinchuan switched off the engine and stepped out of the car, but he heard a voice from behind before he could even close the car door. You came home really late. Where did you go? He turned around abruptly and saw Yan Qingxi leaning on the car next to his. Her hair seemed shorter than before. She was dressed in a white, medium length, line 1. Piece dress. A small black leather jacket, with rivets on the shoulders, completed her look. Her beautiful pair of legs were crossed one over the other, she looked pure, sexy, and had a touch of elegance. Upon seeing Yan Qingxi, Luo Jinchuan's unemotive face finally let out an evil-looking smile. Under the contrast provided by his scholarly-looking glasses, he looked both cultured and savage. He loosened his necktie and walked slowly over to Yan Qingxi. What's wrong? You're finally willing to look for me. Luo Jinchuan pressured Director Feng to hand the roll over to Xue Zheng because he wanted to force Yan Qingxi into looking for him. Unfortunately for him, a few days went by without a word from her. His mood was terrible during the past few days, for his mind was preoccupied with the thought that he miscalculated Yan Qingxi's moves. That night, however, he realized that he was not at all wide of the mark, because there she was, right in front of him. Yan Qingxi crossed her arms while she sized up Luo Jinchuan. I came to see which flirty little slut seduced my sister's boyfriend away. Luo Jinchuan undid the topmost 2 buttons of his shirt. He looked at Yan Qingxi and realized that his ravaging desire was becoming out of hand. He walked to her, neither too fast nor too slow, then said, if you want something, no adversary can ever match up to you. Yan Qingxi uttered in disdain. Oh really? If you're not an adversary, then why did you take away my role for the movie? She put her hand on her hip, lifted her chin, then puffed out her chest. I wonder, dear sister's boyfriend, whether you're actually blind. Is she as beautiful as me? Does she have my body? Or maybe she's good in bed. Luo Jinchuan stretched his hand over to her waist and in one swift movement, reined her into his embrace. How about you worry less about whether she's good in bed? She can be absolutely meaningless if that's what you want. Yan Qingxi tried her best to hold back her disgust and control herself from kicking him in the nuts. She leaned her head close to Luo Jinchuan's ear and placed her hand on his shoulder. "Oh Luo Jinchuan, do you really want to sleep with your girlfriend's sister?" He closed his eyes and breathed in Yan Qingxi's scent. "Yes, I have sleepless nights just thinking about it." Chapter 63. Yan Qingxi was dazzlingly beautiful but extremely lethal. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 63. Yan Qingxi was dazzlingly beautiful but extremely lethal. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. The sight of Yan Qingxi's alluring red lips attracted Luo Jinchuan's attention. With a quiver of his throat, he closed his eyes, lowered his head, and moved in to kiss her. She extended her finger and pressed it against his lips, stopping the kiss. "Don't even think about it. I'm not that easy, you know. I'm not so reckless. Would you always come up empty-handed if I was?" Luo Jinchuan chuckled softly. He particularly enjoyed that side of Yan Qingxi. He never had a place in her heart, to begin with, that was something he knew clearly. She was ruthless, calculative, and could easily choose to treat him as a stranger. Despite all that, he still could not control himself from wanting her. She was the equivalent of a prey item that stood barely inches away, but could never be captured and devoured. Like a poisonous poppy, she was dazzlingly beautiful but extremely lethal. For many men, women like her were fatal attractions. The reason for that was scarcity. Throughout the entire course of one's life, a woman like her was someone that could be encountered only once in a lifetime. Meeting such a woman and failing to get her was a regret that only men could understand. At that precise moment, she was right in front of Luo Jinchuan, sandwiched between his palms. He was not going to let his chance slip by. Holding up her chin, he said, "That role will forever be yours if you want." Yan Qingxi pursed her lips, asking coldly, "Your words sound nice, but what about that flirty little slut named Shuizheng?" Already within his grasp, she stimulated his uncontrollable excitement to sample her. "How can she ever compare to you? She's not as important of you, of course. I'll get you into the cast tomorrow if you want." Shuizheng was nothing. Not even 10 Shuizhengs could surpass the allure of one Yan Qingxi. It's just that this woman is far too hard to get a hold of. Yan Qingxi rolled her eyes. He. Do you take me for a stupid C*NT? When I was out of the country, my female housemate once told me never to trust the words of a man who wants to sleep with you. Men's words are not even worth a dog's bark. Men. They're the most untrustworthy things in the entire world. Instead of getting angry, he smiled when he heard what she said. "Tell me then, what do you propose?" She grabbed his necktie and wrapped it around her hand. "Well, I'll wait till you actually kick out that little B*TCH Shuizheng and put me into the cast for real. I'm not a 3-year-old kid, if I don't see anything concrete, you and I are done." He stroked her waist, and said, "You. I'm not convinced that you'll come to see me again if you get the role." The only thing he could guarantee was that she would toss him aside and never look at him again if he gave her that role. That was Yan Qingxi's character. No one occupied a place in her heart, and she only wanted something if it was genuine. Of course, it was also a good thing that her heart was reserved for no one. In that way, it would at least signal to him that no one was special and that he would always be on the same level as others. It was simply up to all of them to vie for the poisonous flower and see who can pluck it first. Yan Qingxi giggled. "You say it as if you know me very well. Whether I'll come to you or not is up to you. Do you have the charm to get me on my knees right in front of you? To get me to undress and wait for you on top of the bed?" "Oh, Luo Jinchuan, you can't be that unconfident, right? It's not that I'm unconfident. It's you who I can't trust." Yan Qingxi's reddened lips curled up. "Luo Jinchuan, if you want me, you'll have to show me your sincerity. The only thing that comes out of your mouth when your lips move is you telling me you want to sleep with me. That's not gonna be easy. Chapter 64. Luo Jinchuan, show me your prowess. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 64. Luo Jinchuan, show me your prowess. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Luo Jinchuan did not smile but instead locked his eyes on Yan Qingxi's. If I want all that now. Did he know of Yan Qingxi's plan? The only thing he knew for certain was that he had something she really wanted. See, if he gave it to her too easily, she would completely shed all pretense of cordiality with him. All of a sudden, Yan Qingxi pulled on his shirt. She had a smile on her face, but her eyes looked malicious. Well, you can try me out. It just so happens that I'd like to see the prowess of my dear sister's boyfriend. Their faces were reflected on each other's eyes, which seemed to see through each other's thoughts. Then again, it also appeared as though neither knew for sure what the other was thinking. His eyes turned dark and dangerous. He was like a wolf that saved up all its energy to launch itself forward to capture its prey at the last second. At that moment, Yan Qingxi was his prey, one that he drooled for since ages ago. Luo Jinchuan remarked leisurely, well then, make sure you watch closely. His mind was set on not letting Yan Qingxi go that night, but at that precise moment, his phone started ringing. He never intended to pick it up in the first place, but it continued ringing. The sound was particularly ear-piercing due to the silence in the underground parking lot. Irritated and angry, he took it out from his pocket and saw the caller ID. It was Yan Mingzhu. Yan Qingxi glanced at it and smiled coldly to herself. If a couple truly did love each other, they would always use some form of a nickname for their other half's caller ID. Regardless of how sappy or embarrassing it was, they would at least put something other than their significant other's full name. By that caller ID alone, it could be deduced that Yan Mingzhu had no place at all in Luo Jinchuan's heart. Yan Qingxi released her grip on the necktie. TCH. That good old elder sister of mine is checking up on you. Aren't you gonna pick it up? With cold eyes, he let go of Yan Qingxi and picked up the call. Hello, Mingzhu. Jinchuan, I can't sleep. Where are you? Yan Qingxi was not too distant from Luo Jinchuan, so she could hear Yan Mingzhu's coquettish voice clearly. An annoyed look took over Luo Jinchuan's face, but his voice still sounded very gentle. I've already slept. Why did you call me so late? I can't sleep, so I thought of calling you to see if you've slept. Jinchuan, you haven't seen me for a few days now, and I miss you loads. The company's been busy. I'll see you 2 days from now. Yan Qingxi giggled. If the first words he says after not contacting her for a few days were I'm busy or I don't have time, then it wouldn't take a genius to know that he was cheating on her. Yan Mingzhu grumbled. 2 days, 2 days. You're always saying 2 days. I don't care, you have to come see me tomorrow. Licking her lips, Yan Qingxi wondered what mischief she could stir up, considering the wonderful opportunity she had. Simply doing nothing would be a disservice to Yan Mingzhu. Yan Qingxi stretched her neck and faked a voice, saying sweetly, baby. Why aren't you coming in? The water's going cold. Didn't you say you wanted to bathe with me? Luo Jinchuan turned around immediately and gave Yan Qingxi a cold stare. She responded by waggling her eyebrows. Let's see how you're gonna face this situation. Yan Mingzhu shrieked into the phone. Jinchuan. Who's that slut? You're with another woman. Where are you? Where are you? I'm going to rip that slut apart. Tell me. Luo Jinchuan walked over to Yan Qingxi and replied coldly, there's no one. You heard wrongly. Chapter 65. Who would want to look at Yan Mingzhu when one has Yan Qingxi? You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 65. Who would want to look at Yan Mingzhu when one has Yan Qingxi? Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Yan Qingxi curled her lips. Jin Chuan, who are you talking to on the phone? Don't tell me it's that annoying little girlfriend of yours. You told me that she isn't worth a single strand of hair on my head. Didn't you say you'd cut her off now that you have me? Why are you still answering her? Come and enjoy yourself with me. As soon as she finished her sentence, she made a run for it and jumped into her car before Luo Jinchuan managed to catch up. Xiao Su slammed his foot on the accelerator and sped away. Yan Qingxi rolled down the windows, waved goodbye to Luo Jinchuan, and flipped the bird at him. She did not find it necessary to cover up the maliciousness in her eyes. Kick up a storm, go ahead and kick it up good. Yan Mingzhu's hissy fit gave him a headache as well as an agitated mind. He narrowed his eyes and watched as the car left with Yan Qingxi in it. It was too late to chase after her even if he wanted to, and the chance to get Yan Qingxi slipped through his hands yet again. Yan Mingzhu was still sobbing and shrieking into the phone. Her voice annoyed Luo Jinchuan. He remarked coldly, "It's late. I want to rest." Luo Jinchuan, you're going to F***ck that slut, aren't you? How can you treat me like this? You're not allowed to touch other women, and if you touch her, I'll make sure you regret it. Yan Mingzhu was going ballistic at the other end of the line. With a face full of exasperation and infuriation, Luo Jinchuan said, I've already touched her. Yan Mingzhu, I'm breaking up with you. I'm fed up. He really was fed up. He could still entertain Yan Mingzhu, albeit half-heartedly, when Yan Qingxi was not around. With Yan Qingxi's return and presence, however, he had absolutely no interest in Yan Mingzhu. Yan Mingzhu's voice was trembling hard. Jin Chuan. What did you say? I'm breaking up with you. There's nothing else to it. Luo Jinchuan hung up without hesitation and switched off his cell phone immediately after. Looking at the entrance to the parking lot, he wondered why Yan Qingxi left without even getting the answer she wanted to hear. After all, she went to him because she wanted her role back. She was not someone who would admit defeat so easily, unless perhaps that she had other plans. At times, her cold-bloodedness was utterly terrifying, but despite having knowledge of that fact, he found her irresistible. He wanted to see if she had anything else hidden up her sleeve. Xiao Su zoomed out of the parking lot and onto the highway, where Yan Qingxi proceeded to ask him, were the pictures you took clear? He handed the camera over to her. Don't worry. Take a look for yourself. Yan Qingxi held the camera and browsed through the images. In each of them, only Yan Qingxi's back was visible. Even the sides of her face were covered by her hair, ensuring that she was completely unrecognizable. The same could not be said of Luo Jinchuan however, whose entire face was photographed with crystal-clear clarity. Each photograph captured them hugging extremely intimately. A few even looked like they were kissing due to the angle. In short, they were all very juicy shots. Satisfied, Yan Qingxi told him. I'll give you a bonus next time when I get rich. Yan Qingxi's motive for finding Luo Jinchuan was to enact that scene. She did not expect his lust to blind him to the point where he would just agree to her demands. Xiao Su chuckled and said, Thanks, Miss Qingxi. Remember, you can't tell anyone about this. Xiao Su patted his chest. Don't worry miss, I'll keep it a secret. He sent her back to her apartment, leaving only after he saw her enter the house. Chapter 66. Yan Qingxi, we're fated. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 66. Yan Qingxi, we're fated. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Yan Qingxi stood beside the window and watched Xiao Su drive off. Ednel.co dawn was only a few hours away, and while the Yan family was in a state of disarray, she decided to deal with some other things. She made a phone call. It's me. Let's meet. Same place. After hanging up, She wore the same black tracksuit that she wore previously, then donned a peaked cap and a mask. She subsequently took out a bag and stuffed it into her pocket. Once she was downstairs, she headed for the neighborhood car shed, where numerous electric vehicles and motorcycles were parked. She took a hairpin from her hair, which she then used to unlock one of the electric-powered motorcycles. It was only when she pushed it out that she realized something: it was bloody impossible to start an electrical vehicle nowadays without using a key. She clenched her teeth and rued how troublesome it was not to have her car. Fortunately, she was near the city center. If luck was on her side, she might come across a taxi operating in the wee hours of the morning. She walked for 10 minutes, but there was no taxi in sight. When she finally began to despair, her phone rang suddenly. Taking it out from her pocket, she looked and saw that it was Yutingfeng. She smiled bitterly, for she knew his character well. If she did not pick up his call, she could kiss her peaceful night goodbye. She proceeded to hold the phone to her ear, saying, "I'm sleeping. I don't have time to play with you." Sleeping. More like sleepwalking. You're taking a stroll on the street in the middle of the night while sleeping. Yutingfeng's voice was relaxed and somewhat hoarse. It sounded much richer and erotic in the dead of night. Yan Qingxi was shocked. "How did you?" She barely made it past those 3 words when a bright light shone from behind her. It all became clear to her, and she turned to look at the oncoming car, snickering. "Even though I'm out on the street so early in the morning, I still managed to bump into you, Mr. Yu. What fate we have. Should I be happy about this? Or should I curse at you?" What luck she had to run into the B***** every single time she wanted to do something evil. Yutingfeng chuckled from within the car. "You seem to be in a good mood." He had been lazing around in the Jade Orchid Pavilion until midnight, but his mood never took a turn for the better. Yutingfeng decided to go home, but on his way back he discovered a bundle of fun, much to his surprise. Yan Qingxi, how fated. She clenched her jaw. "Good mood my A**s. It's quite good actually. So good in fact, that if I'm driving now, I'll make sure to crash your car. TSK. Then you'd better be fast, otherwise, you won't even be able to chase me, let alone crash my car." In the darkness of the night, Yan Qingxi gnashed her teeth and narrowed her eyes. She asked, grinning fiendishly, "Oh really? Do you think I'm not fast enough to chase you to the bedroom? Hold up I'll have the bed sent right over to you." He hung up and the disconnect tone was all she heard. Meanwhile, the car pulled over slowly just ahead of her. Yan Qingxi frowned. How much more ill-fated could she be to bump into this B*****? The car window lowered to reveal Yutingfeng's magnificent face. "The bed's already here. How about it? Late nights are the best time to carry out an affair, and perhaps now you can make up for that other night." Yutingfeng's eyes were fixed on Yan Qingxi, while his arm was propped over the wound-down car window. At the same time, his index finger was stroking his lower lip gently. It was those dark and enigmatic eyes that were dangerously alluring. She gave him a cold grin. "I'm so sorry to disappoint you. I just came back from having an affair. I've had my fill and I don't have any appetite left." He sized up her attire and asked, "No appetite for an affair? How about an appetite to kill someone, then?" What a quiet night it was, but in the blink of an eye, the atmosphere appeared fraught with peril. It was tense, like a bow that had been drawn as far back as it could possibly go. The arrow may well be launched at any given time. She leaned over slowly and placed one hand on the car roof. Placing her lips close to his ear, she whispered in a tender, lover-like voice, "How about I kill you? Would you let me? ______ bonus. Qingxi bought all kinds of poison online. She's on the search for one that could kill someone fast and silence them for good." Chapter 67. She really did want to kill him. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 67. She really did want to kill him. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Yan Qingxi's voice was pleasant and lingering, downright unforgettable for any man who heard it. Every male who heard her speak would feel as though their ears went numb. She had precisely the charm that made men unable to let her go. At that moment, Yu Tingfeng felt that buzzing in his ears too, but deep down, he knew that Yan Qingxi's words were not as beautiful as her voice. What she said was the truth. Yan Qingxi really did want to kill him. He had information that could be used against her since he was the one who saw what she did to Yan Mingxiu. She was not without a heart though, it was just very black. Occasionally, Yu Tingfeng felt that its blackness reached a point where nothing he did in his lifetime could ever turn it red again. Nevertheless, that was precisely why Yu Tingfeng wanted to make her his. He chuckled softly. That depends on how you'd like to kill me. If it's on the bed, then do as you please. Yan Qingxi's hand crept up slowly to Yu Tingfeng's neck. I guarantee that your ghost will be proud if you die by my hands. She may be smiling when she said that, but no one had as clear an understanding as her regarding the true murderous intent of those words. Yan Qingxi really wanted to kill Yu Tingfeng there and then, silencing him for good. If he died, the threats would die with him. The reality, however, was that she was incapable of doing so. A healthy man's strength was clearly superior to a woman's. Yu Tingfeng stretched his arm and hooked her waist. Since I'm already here, why not come and give it a try? She cocked a brow. Sure. A second later, she told him, but not tonight. He grasped the slender waist that lay beneath her tracksuit. Why not? You up to no good? She cocked her brow yet again. It'd be better if you don't poke your nose into my activities. Even if you know something, you'd better pretend as though you don't know anything, otherwise. I can't guarantee what I might do to you in the future. If Yu Tingfeng knew too much about her, sooner or later, she would devise the perfect crime to bury him under the ground. Yan Qingxi would never reveal too many details about herself, especially to someone she did not know. Yu Tingfeng was a man she could not and did not plan to trust. What use were men, anyway? Yu Tingfeng looked at her eyes. They were truly the most beautiful and enchanting of eyes, but through them, one could distinctly discern her look of determination and ruthlessness. Without a doubt, she was a woman who did things by hook or by crook. Such a challenging woman stood right before his eyes, one that Yu Tingfeng was just itching to tame. Murder and arson were such negligible acts. Being a bad person himself, he would in no way decide to police someone and paint himself as a beacon of morality. Yu Tingfeng lifted her chin, forcing her to look at him. TSK, you say that without considering my feelings. For better or worse, you and I both have mutual secrets, don't we? Her lips curled into a frigid smile. Mutual secrets. Pfft, more like secrets you can threaten me with. Get in the car, Yu Tingfeng offered. I'll send you to wherever you want to go. Are you really considering just walking on foot at this hour? Aren't you scared that you'll suddenly disappear only for your corpse to be found somewhere a few days from now? No need, she declined. I'm worried that if I get into your car, a male corpse might pop up somewhere a few days from now. She was worried that she might lose control and do something to him. Chapter 68. I'm a fox spirit that specializes in devouring men. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 68. I'm a fox spirit that specializes in devouring men. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Yu Tingfeng's brows twitched excitedly. You say it as though you're really an evil spirit. Can't you just gobble me up, then? Yan Qingxi curled her lips and replied, yes, I'm a fox. Spirit that specializes in devouring men. Especially men like you. Then all the more reason to get in the car. I love feeding myself to fox. Spirits. Almost instantly, she knew that Yu Tingfeng was planning on getting involved with her. She nodded, pinched his chin gently, then smiled. You're looking for death, aren't you? His expression was languid and completely devoid of fear. Are you brave enough? Yan Qingxi got into the car at the very next second. You seem to be willing and therefore, I shall grant your wish. Yu Tingfeng noticed that she did not put on her seatbelt but did not remind her to do so. Where to? She looked askance at him. Since we're going to kill tonight, it has to be the usual place. He started the car and drove. 10 minutes later, he stopped at Central Plaza. Yan Qingxi could spot the shadowy figure from afar. No one else was present at that hour, so she needed only one look to spot that lonely silhouette. She got down and said, "Wait here." Yu Tingfeng grabbed her hand and pinched her palm. I witnessed how you killed someone. What else is there that I can't see? She turned her hand over and countered him by grabbing his wrist. A charming smile was flashed toward him. You should stay far away from me when I'm doing bad things, Mr. Yu. Knowing too much may lead death to come and silence you tonight. Yan Qingxi seemed to be half serious and half bluffing. If I insist on coming. Her hands stretched out and held him firmly on his shoulder. Then try me. Their gazes collided with each other in the dimly lit car. She retracted her hand, opened the car, and got off. Yu Tingfeng sat inside the car and watched as Yan Qingxi walked away. He narrowed his eyes. This woman. She's truly King evil. Yu Tingfeng did not go with her. He knew that he could not exert too much pressure on Yan Qingxi, for it would mean a life-and-death struggle for the both of them that night. Getting her was something he needed to do slowly. With mask and cap on, Yan Qingxi walked toward Tang Yuyao and stood before her. She saw Yan Qingxi and said, "You're here." Yan Qingxi nodded, took out a bag, then handed it over to Tang Yuyao. Having taken the bag, Tang Yuyao asked, "What's this?" "Poison. Used for killing people." Yan Qingxi's voice was all the more frightening when heard at night. She sounded like someone whose mental state had been severed in half by a knife. Tang Yuyao's hand was shaking. This. Devoid of emotion, Yan Qingxi began explaining, in the coming days, Yan Songnan's troubles will increase. Once all that is done, it'll be the perfect opportunity for you to rope him in. This poison. Use 1 drop per dose. It's colorless, tasteless, and slow-acting. Even doctors are unable to detect it. It's up to you to use it, or not. Tang Yuyao's hesitation lasted but a few seconds. After that, she grasped the bag tightly. Yes, I understand. All the best. You. Too. Tang Yuyao left and so did Yan Qingxi. They both made their way to opposite directions. Yan Qingxi got back into the car. Let's go. Where to now? Yu Tingfeng asked. Yan Qingxi blew her nails and smiled devilishly. My darling little brother has been hospitalized for a few days but I haven't paid him a visit until now. I think I've failed as a big sister. Underscore 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 PS. Our seer asks, little goblins, murder, arson, affairs, and robbery are things best done at midnight. Anyone wants to form a group? Chapter 69. My dear little brother, Big Sis is here to see you. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 69. My dear little brother, Big Sis is here to see you. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation. Glancing briefly at Yu Tingfeng, Yan Qingxi remarked, since you're pretty interested about today, Mr. Yu, I might as well let you in on another mutual secret. She may not be able to kill him but the least she could do was prevent him from threatening her all the time. Considering the fact that he already knew one secret, then she might as well let him in on another one, therefore altering his status from a witness to an accomplice. Yan Qingxi always lived by one rule, that is, if she had to suffer, then the other party must not have it easy too. Yu Tingfeng showed such an interest that it only seemed right for her to drag him down with herself. He cocked a brow and replied, "Sure." Deep in his heart, he felt a tiny thrill. It was an indescribable feeling, similar to the exhilaration he felt when committing misdeeds during his student days. Off to the hospital, he drove. There were few people in the hospital past midnight, so it was quiet and spooky. The smell of disinfectant could be picked up by the nose even from some distance away. Yan Qingxi hopped off the car and went straight into the building where the ward was located. Yu Tingfeng pulled her arm. "Are you really going to just go in like this? Do I look that stupid to you?" Yan Qingxi rolled her eyes. Dodging the surveillance cameras, the two of them sneaked into the hospital's shift room, where the nurses were all sleeping soundly. Yu Tingfeng could see first-hand how easily Yan Qingxi unlocked the wardrobe. She then took out a large white coat and a nurse's uniform. "Change," Yan Qingxi said at the ladies' room. Yu Tingfeng refused. "I never wear clothes from another person." He had no idea which doctor it was that wore those clothes before, not to mention what kind of person that doctor was. Yu Tingfeng would never use something that someone else had used before. "Is that so?" Yan Qingxi smiled. The next moment, Yan Qingxi turned around and opened the tap. On one side there was a cup which had been thrown away for God knows how long. She took that cup, filled it with water, then splashed it on Yu Tingfeng. "You." She put down the cup and lifted up the coat. "You have come so far today, you will wear this whether you like it or not." Since he was already there with her that day, she insisted on dragging Yu Tingfeng down with her. He could keep dreaming if he wanted to stay out of it. Yu Tingfeng stared at his sopping wet shirt and looked at Yan Qingxi. He suddenly began to wonder if Yan Qingxi was bringing him down the gutter with her. He raised his eyebrow and asked, "Are you going to help me put it on?" Under the light, his smile was brazenly malicious. Soaked though he was, he still kept his composure. People like him did actually exist on the face of the earth. Regardless of what kind of situation they were in, they always looked breathtakingly majestic. One look at his radiant face and Yan Qingxi began to feel a little itch. "I'm much more used to taking off clothes rather than putting some on." Yu Tingfeng's face inched closer. "Taking off clothes is much better, of course. There's no one else here." The insinuation was readily understood. He simply stopped short of saying, "Let's do it right now." Yan Qingxi swatted away his oncoming hand and said, "All right, I'll help you put it on." He lifted his arms and allowed her to dress him up in the clothes. "Let's go, CEO." They both went out right after putting on their surgical masks. Yu Tingfeng walked ahead of her without even avoiding the surveillance cameras. In the dead of night, no other sound was present except for their footsteps. Reaching the ICU successfully, she tore down her mask to reveal her nefarious smile. She dragged Yu Tingfeng in with her. On the sickbed lay Yan Mingxiu, whose eyes were closed shut. His face was pale and had an oxygen mask put over it. Yan Qingxi stretched her hand and caressed Yan Mingxiu's face lovingly. Then came her tender voice. "My dear little brother, Big Sis is here to see you." Chapter 70. Run, for the misdeed is done. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Chapter 70. Run, for the misdeed is done. Translator. Endless Fantasy Translation Editor. Endless Fantasy Translation, slap. That crisp sound was produced by Yu Tingfeng slapping away Yan Qingxi's hand. "The hell are you touching him for? Watch out for infections." Yan Qingxi rolled her eyes at him. She took out a loaded hypodermic needle and gave it to Yu Tingfeng. "Do it." Stunned, he asked, "What's this for?" He knew full well that it was for Yan Mingxiu, but he was also aware that it was not something beneficial. Yan Qingxi shot him a glance. "You don't need to care so much. It's not to kill him, it's just to make him sleep forever without waking up." If something happened to Yan Mingxiu, it would be a crushing blow to the Yan family. The first step in her quest for revenge was to dispose of Yan Mingxiu. Since the plan was already well underway, there was no turning back anymore. Yu Tingfeng saw how stony and devoid of emotion her eyes were. He pulled Yan Qingxi into his embrace and said, "Dragging me down with you." Both of them wore masks, so the eyes were the only visible feature on their faces. Their pupils were darker than ever, but Yan Qingxi giggled suddenly. She placed both arms over his neck and asked, "What else do you think it could be?" "So, are you doing it?" Yu Tingfeng's graceful fingers fiddled with the needle. "What will I get in return tonight if I did it?" she responded by raising her brow and saying, "How about I spend the night with you?" All of a sudden, he lowered his head and kissed her lips. Despite being separated by the masks, it was like he could feel the heat coming from those lips. He released her and said, "Sure." Yan Qingxi watched as he stuck the needle into Yan Mingxiu's arm. As the fluid began draining from the barrel, the delight in her eyes grew even more. He removed the needle and said, "It's done. I'm now considered an accomplice in murder. I suppose you now have peace of mind." Yan Qingxi turned toward Yan Mingxiu and said, "So long, my dear little brother. May you continue to sleep like this for all eternity." Yu Tingfeng frowned, then dragged her out by the arm. "You've done something bad and yet you're still not making the run for it. You're committing crimes like an idiot. If it wasn't for me, wouldn't you have been arrested long ago?" Yan Qingxi snickered. The only reason he had information which could be used against her was that she had the bad luck of bumping into him. Once out of the room, the safest exit was after a turn just up ahead. Hearing a nurse doing her rounds, Yu Tingfeng grabbed Yan Qingxi immediately and hid at the next door ward. He pulled her out only when the coast was clear. In between moments of concealing their presence, they finally managed to return to the shift room. The nurse that was sleeping earlier was gone, giving them time to shed the clothes and place them back where they came from. Finally, they exited the hospital and got into the car, where Yan Qingxi looked at Yu Tingfeng and exclaimed, "You seem to be quite familiar with your way around the place. You must have done plenty of bad things too." Yu Tingfeng drove the car with one hand and held Yan Qingxi's hand with the other. "Why, yes. I can do things that are even worse. Would you like to try? I won't stop you if you really wish to dig your own grave." Yan Qingxi no longer felt a need to avoid Yu Tingfeng. Police reports. Threats. Hee. His sorry A*S is already an accomplice. There was nothing else for her to fear. Back at Yu Tingfeng's private residence, the sky was already starting to get bright. Yu Tingfeng pressed her onto the door as soon as they entered. The madness he went through that night made him excited to eat up Yan Qing's, that vixen of a girl. He fancied himself mentally ill, for he had done all those things just to help that woman. Yan Qingxi put a finger to Yu Tingfeng's nearing lips, smiling resplendently. "I said I'll spend the night with you, but it's already bright, isn't it? There's not a single F***king reason for me to continue being here. _____PS. Our C heir says that she's always the one doing the eating, so there's no logic in her being eaten.